Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you for tuning in to SaugaTalks today. We know you're busy. We know you're busy with work. You're busy with vacations. Wherever you're watching us or listening to us, please follow SaugaTalks. All right. We want your engagement. We want your participation. We want to hear what's happening on your neck of the woods, so to speak, because we're discussing tech trends, we're discussing adoption practices, we're discussing everything in between, okay, with fascinating people in tech. So we're asking you to please find us on LinkedIn, on Twitter, YouTube, and major podcasting platform, okay, wherever you are, whenever you are, find us. You will not regret it. Today I'm so privileged to host Nick King is here with me. Nick, how are you?
Really great to be here, Irene. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great.
Fabulous, because we're discussing generative AI, all right? Seems like everywhere I go, okay, it pops up in one form or another, all the way from creativity and artistic possibilities, all the way to programming and business analysis and data analysis and you name it, and content creation, of course, right? But we're gonna be discussing, how organizations, how leaders can take it seriously as we all trying to educate ourselves, okay, wrap our heads around it. And my previous guest here last week was talking about AI literacy even, okay. We do need to raise up the level of knowledge first before we do anything and everything with that powerful technology. So let's start somewhere. Generative AI for business outcomes, okay, one thing for fun and play, right? We all see it, we're all having good time with it, but for business outcomes, what do you think leaders should be thinking about now?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with your previous guest, which is, understanding AI literacy or just AI concepts in general is a big step forward. And I think with generative AI, what we really see to start with is leaders, they first need to understand how it can influence their business. And there's a really big gap between seeing what you see at home and sort of seeing the great innovation we've seen around ChatGPT and kind of saying, okay, how does this apply in an enterprise context or a government context? And how can you apply those things in a predictable way that's safe, that is revenue positive and can be impactful? And so generally the first step that we go about and we talk to organizations with, and we generally start with the business side and the technology side being slightly separate. And I'll go into why that is. So generally we ask the business, what are you trying to solve and what are your timelines for those? And like, what are those problems worth to you? And we generally try not to talk about tech at all. We're just sort of understanding where those gaps are. And, in the background, what we're kind of thinking about is like, okay, what different techniques do we have? What has worked before? What could we do differently? What's in our hands today that wasn't in our hands 2 years ago? And that allows us to kind of help the business in some ways prioritize their business outcomes, aligned to how generative AI or how a number of the different types of model techniques could benefit them. And on the technology side, generally we're looking for a couple things. We're saying, okay, what are the repeatable components of infrastructure that need to be delivered? And then we're also saying like, hey, we know there's a lot of progress in this particular space. Like custom large language models is a lot of conversations about those at the moment. Generally, we're finding that you can get a lot more impact by using existing large language models or open source large language models and building around that with the assumption over time, building your own custom large language model will get easier for individual corporations. And so some of that from like why we separate the business from technology to start with is to get those two pieces, then we'll join them back up. And that's really the first step. It's really three steps, but you've got to first get your business strategy aligned to your ability to deliver on it from a technology perspective. You've got to build a technology strategy that allows you to get fastest results in line with where we expect the market to go to. So that's also very important. And then you turn that into a strategy. And that generally is the first step of how we would go about engaging enterprises about how to adopt some of these generative AI technologies.
Beautiful. You know what I guess making leaders and teams and everyone in that ecosystem wake up in the morning and going to work, with enthusiasm, with the ability to make that difference, right? Is identifying these new opportunities, Okay, what kind of work streams can you point out? Because looks like, right, if I would be making the decisions for organization, I would be right now thinking, hey, are we creating enough content? Are we our product design, can it be improved with this new opportunities? So what's the best way of looking at it? Because again, defining strategies and having this all homework done is good thing. But technology is evolving, and people really want to get a hold of it now.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think I almost flip that question around, and the reason I do that is because for businesses, you want impact, and you want to be able to know where that impact is coming, particularly in today's economic climate. And so, usually, the question that I encourage both technology and businesses to go and ask every day is, what's the closest known problem you can solve, and what's it worth to the business? So it could be something as simple as fraud detection, or it could be something as complex as dynamic pricing and prioritization, or reforecasting. And once you understand the value of those problems, then the technology becomes almost pulled through because of that. And I think the mistake that a lot of technologists make is we rush in with this cool technology and we start talking to the board and we do these massive presentations. And I've literally sat in these conversations where the most beautiful technical presentation, and then afterwards I'm talking to one of the EVPs of supply chain. He's like, Nick, I have no idea what they said. It sounded cool. My kids do use that stuff, but I don't know how that applies to my business. And I think there's a massive disconnect. And so I think that's the first step, is looking at the business problems. The other area that we find is really motivational for organizations is looking at areas where they might have had adjacencies or areas they couldn't get into before. And so often that means looking at, could they verticalize more? Are they able to, go further upstream or downstream in the traditional markets? And with some of the AI techniques, is it faster to prototype and test those outcomes? And so this is another interesting piece. So I sort of talked about core enterprise, and these known use cases with known value amounts. And let's talk about incubation enterprise, which is, could we experiment as an organization and see if we can disrupt our vertical market with an experiment and be able to fail fast or succeed fast at the outcome? And I think that's another area where we see, you could be a little more technology first in that approach, but you also are quickly validating its business outcomes. And so that's why I flip the question on one side for core business, go the other way for incubation. That tends to be the sort of framework that allows you to innovate on both sides of that equation.